Well, happy 3rd of July. Hopefully, you have tomorrow off, maybe even today off. But I just read something that said that this is when football fans start tuning back into the NFL. 4th of July weekend, and I guess it's going to be 4th of July Tuesday this time of the year. But there's always this dead period in the back half of June after veteran mini camps end, after that OTA season ends, before training camp, obviously. But at some point, the thaw has to melt and people have to start getting excited again. And that usually happens before training camp. And I guess an inflection point, according to some of the data, and we'll see if that's true based on the data of this video. I'll go and check to see how many people are watching later on. But I guess an inflection point happens to be that 4th of July holiday. And hey, maybe if the viewership is low, maybe that means it's just July 3rd. Maybe July 4th, July 5th is when it's going to get bigger. And we're going to be touching on some of the themes of what I wrote up on The Athletic today here for several days, maybe even several weeks, because we can get deep into this. In the off season, when things are truly dead, I like to go in and look at the mechanics of how the 49ers are spending their money. So the piece is up right now. Here you go. How the 49ers spend their cap dollars, from Nick Bosa's D-line to Brock Purdy's quarterback room. And I have a nice pie chart ready for you. These are always really fun, right? Break down how the 49ers spend their money. As you can tell, there's a big piece of the pie, over a quarter of the pie, 28% for the defensive line. 49ers top spenders at that position group in football. You'll notice that the QB section of the pie, not nearly as big as it was before. QB over at 6.8%. It was 14% in the past. Obviously, no more Jimmy Garoppolo on the books for the 49ers with that big 20 plus something $million deal. Last year, he wasn't on there with that deal either. Last year, he signed the deal that was heavily incentive based, but the 49ers now operating with 3 very cost efficient quarterback contracts. We can take a look at the rest of this as I go through it position by position, but here's how the 49ers rank spending wise at each position against the rest of the NFL. So they're number 1 in D-line spending, $66.4 million. Number 1 in tight end spending, that thanks to George Kittle's contract, $23.6 million. I'm going to get to the rest of this in a bit. You'll probably notice they're way down there in DB spending now, number 31. That's actually a change from last season. But the main point is that the 49ers have a finite amount of cap money. That pie can't get any bigger on a year-to-year basis. Of course, you can run restructures and do this and do that. But on a, if you're considering this from a big picture perspective, the bill's going to come due at some point, right? And we saw it come due for the Rams this past year. They had to cut several players, several veterans that they didn't want to cut because that sink ran too full. And that's probably the best analogy, probably better even than the pie analogy. Is the salary cap is a sink that's filling up, and you have to make sure that the water that's entering the sink, it can enter the sink, and you're going to need more water in the sink, but you have to make sure that it is not entering at a greater rate than it's exiting for too long, because at some point that sink is going to reach the very surface. You're going to lose the benefit of surface tension, and it's going to spill over. And when it spills over, that's when you have to make those painful cuts. So there's a finite amount of water that you have to work with as an NFL team, and that finite amount of water must be divvied up in smart ways. Is this a good division from the 49ers? Well, why don't we discuss? Why don't we go through this position by position, starting with the 49ers quarterback cap hit? It's decreased from 14% of their budget last year to just 6.8% this season. So when you're spending less on the QB position, and this is, a reduction of about half at the quarterback position, you can spend more elsewhere. That's the idea for the 49ers. With Garoppolo, when they were paying him $25+ million a year, like I said, that percentage was about 15% for the 49ers. And they had more cap room then, because cap room carries over from year to year. They were still building the football team when they signed Garoppolo to the big deal in 2018. But as the 49ers star core of players grew, the cap space became tighter and tighter. And then they had to start making some hard decisions. And at the forefront of those decisions was deciding who to reward as an A-list player. If you qualified as a true A-list player for the 49ers, that means a great transcendent player around whom they wanted to build a foundation, they would pay you. But they were going to have to find ways to save money elsewhere to pay those A-list players. So the money elsewhere you would find through economic contracts, through the draft, right? You would find rookie replacements for some more B-list, C-list roles, but you would allow that A-list core to continue growing. The 49ers decided that Jimmy Garoppolo was a good quarterback, but he wasn't an A-list quarterback because he couldn't stay healthy all the time. And they decided, okay, let's slash this quarterback spending. We need to be more efficient with our money here. We need to find a QB that's available. And they went for Trey Lance. Now, unfortunately, that hasn't worked out yet because Trey Lance has gotten hurt at a higher rate than Jimmy Garoppolo even got hurt. And obviously, Trey Lance isn't as good as Jimmy Garoppolo was because that development has not yet happened. But we're looking at the quarterback position in its totality right now when we look at this chart. And in its totality, the 49ers are paying Trey Lance, and he has the biggest cap hit out of all the 49ers QBs this year as a former number 3 pick, still on that rookie deal, over $9 million for Trey Lance. They're paying Sam Darnold, who's got a cap hit of about $5 or $6 million, so that's fairly cost efficient. And they're paying Brock Purdy, who has a cap hit of only about 800-something thousand. So that is bang for your buck with Brock Purdy. You add all three of those cap hits together, it's only 6.8% of the 49ers total budget here for 2023. So Lance is expensive. Don't get me wrong. For a rookie, he's still expensive. He's cheaper than a veteran quarterback making $30 million a year, but still at over $9 million, he's expensive, especially considering the fact that he hasn't done anything yet at the NFL level. Brock Purdy's done quite a bit already at the NFL level, right? Had that whole run at the end of the 2023 season, and he comes really cheap at $800-something thousand for this 2023 books. I said 2023 season for Purdy, 2022 season when he performed. We're waiting to see how that elbow does here in 2023, but he still is very, very cost efficient. So the 49ers are essentially getting the production that they had hoped they would get from Trey Lance from Brock Purdy instead. So those two are inverted, but they're still getting the really cost-efficient quarterback at number 262 in Purdy, and that's allowed the 49ers quarterback spending to decrease to 6.8%, even despite the fact that they spent some money to sign Sam Darnold. So meanwhile, when you spend less on one position, you could probably spend more elsewhere. And one area that the 49ers have decided to invest more in is running back. Running back is where Christian McCaffrey is, and they actually reduced his 2023 cap hit recently with a restructure that pushed money forward into the future. So McCaffrey's cap hit went down from $12 million to about $3.8 million. But still, as you can see here, the 49ers running back bill, 6.4% of their budget, is still near the top of the NFL. $15.3 million total for running backs this year. That's number 5 in the league. That's still the highest it's ever been under Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. And I delve a little bit further into this in the actual article. It's up on the screen here. If you want to check this out, the link is in the description. We're going to go through every position in that article, so I'm going into it in much more detail than I can when I'm just talking about it. But check out the link in the description. I'm also going to put this one into the comment section for right now. So go ahead and check that out. I think you can get onto The Athletic for less money than the 49ers are allocating to the running back position as far as cap space goes. But there's the link. It is right underneath me. So go ahead and go off to that description to check it out. Anyway, back to the running back position. You could see here that spending is higher than it's ever been under Shanahan and Lynch. Number 5 in the league. It was number 1 before Christian McCaffrey restructured his contract. Kyle Juszczyk still has the biggest cap hit of any fullback in football. That's at over $6 million. The 49ers obviously treat the running back position as a premium position, and I think rightfully so, because Kyle Shanahan uses those running backs and uses his fullback in a plethora of different ways. In fact, the better quality that you have at running back, if you're not just going cheap at running back, if you're going with a real player like Christian McCaffrey or a real player like Kyle Juszczyk at fullback, the more strain is taken off of other positions, because McCaffrey is also a slot receiver, even an outside receiver. Hell, Kyle Juszczyk lines up on the outside about 10 times a year. These are Swiss Army knives that are part of the 49ers positionless skill position distribution offensively. So if they can produce and you invest in quality at running back, then you don't have to spend as much at receiver or maybe even tight end, even though the 49ers are spending some at tight end. They're just not spending that much on receiver this season. And some of you may be wondering why, since they just paid Deebo Samuel, and I'll explain in a second. But if you look at tight end, 9.9%, wide receiver, 9.2% of the budget. If you look at the rankings there, tight end, that is the most expensive tight end room in the NFL, $23.6 million. Most of that is George Kittle's backloaded contract, which is now coming due against the cap, $23.6 million total on tight ends. Same idea, though, as the receivers for this tight end position. George Kittle plays wide receiver, too. George Kittle has the same effect in the passing game as some of the best receivers in the league. And he also has an effect as a tight end blocking. So the 49ers have found a way to impact the defenses, impact spacing in the pass game through both the running back and the tight end positions. And hell, we can even add fullback to that with Kyle Juszczyk. So they're not afraid to spend a little bit more money at running back and a little bit more money at tight end because it benefits the entire offensive framework. Meanwhile, wide receiver, only $22 million total, which ranks number 24 this season. The reason for that is that Deebo Samuel's contract is very backloaded. Samuel's cap hit's like $8 million this year. It balloons or is set to balloon to $28 million next season. That plus the 49ers have to think about paying Brandon Ayuk next season. So all of a sudden, what we're seeing right here with this, the number 24 ranking for the 49ers wide receiver room, this might not hold true in 2024. Receiver might be set to reach the top of the league in terms of spending. And that presents just a fundamental issue for the 49ers. Where's that, piece of the pie going to come from? If wide receiver has to balloon to 15% or more, this yellow section, that gets bigger, where is going to shrink on here? And those are questions for the 49ers planners. This season, they allowed the defensive line spending to get really, really big. And the 49ers love spending big on the defensive line, but that's 27.7% of spending. They added Javon Hargrave. This should actually even increase more over the long run because Hargrave's deal is backloaded, so they're not even seeing the brunt of his cap hits yet. And even though this will get smaller in the short run once Nick Bosa signs his extension, because the 49ers will actually spread Bosa's cap hit out past 2023. In the long run, Bosa is going to probably earn a record deal. So that money is going to have to hit the cap at some point. So what I don't see the 49ers defensive line spending getting all that much smaller in the future because of those two reasons, because a lot of money is still going to be due to Bosa and Hargrave. So then you ask, well, where are they going to, tighten the belt? And to that I answer, they already did start to tighten the belt this offseason right here at the DB position. Last year, the 49ers had spent $23.6 million in cap space on defensive backs. That was for 2022, and it ranked number 13 in the NFL. This year, the 49ers aren't spending much less. It's a virtually unchanged amount, $23.1 million, but it now ranks number 31 in the NFL. So what's happened is that the league has gone on a spending spree for defensive backs, but the 49ers have decided to stand pat and trust rookies and trust bargain bin veterans in the development process. As an example, the cap hits for 2023 of Talanoa Hufanga, Deommodore Lenoir, and Tashawn Gibson average only $1.4 million per year. That's a lot of production that the 49ers are getting, and there's an all-pro player in there. There was a top safety performer in there, and there's a good corner in there. Deommodore Lenoir finished last season playing really well for only $1.4 million per player. So whereas you have teams like the Seahawks and the Patriots going the whole coverage over rush route, the 49ers are very obviously going rush, defensive line right here, 27.7% over coverage, defensive backs making only 9.6% of the budget. The 49ers are hoping that they can, really scrounge a bargain out of the DB position, and they're hoping that a defensive line with Bosa and Hargrave and Eric Armstead can rush so effectively that the DBs are elevated, that you don't need star power beyond Charvarius Ward at defensive back. And this is how the 49ers have operated throughout the course of the Shanahan-Lynch regime. Richard Sherman, they decided to pay him. Charvarius Ward, they decided to pay him. But the 49ers haven't gone beyond paying cornerback one. They like the bargain bin, and they like the draft rookie wage scale efficiency for the rest of the DB room. Somebody like Jair Brown, their top pick in this past draft, he's only going to be accounting for a cap hit of about $800-something thousand. So if the coaching and the defensive line can elevate the defensive backfield in an efficient way, the 49ers can get away with this. The 49ers can get away with that 27.7%, that splurge on the defensive line. How about we move over to the O-line? O-line's really interesting because O-line is Trent Williams making record money, or was record money when he signed that deal. And that's a $27.2 million cap hit this year. Second place on the 49ers O-line is Jake Brendel, who they just re-signed, but to a relatively very cheap deal, just 2.4%. Colton McKivitz, a $1.5 million, $2.4 million for Jake Brendel, not 2.4%. Colton McKivitz, $1.5 million cap hit this year. He's going to be your starting right tackle. So $27 million on one side of the offensive line at left tackle for Trent Million, for Trent Million. Little slip there, and I think that's Trent. $27 million this year. $27 million for Williams on the left side, $1.5 million for McKivitz on the right side. Rookie deal for Aaron Banks at left guard. A veteran deal for Jake Brendel, but an affordable one at $2.4 million at center, and a rookie deal for Spencer Burford at right guard for the 49ers. That is a massive gap between Trent Williams and everyone else. In the overall spending sense, here you have it. 49ers offensive line ranks number 17. 32 teams, so they're just below average. Average is $44 million in the NFL. 49ers spend a combined $43.9 million on their O-line this season. This is going to lead to all of the debates, right? The people who think the 49ers haven't done enough for the offensive line will say, well, they should have splurged more on the offensive line this offseason. Whereas the other side will say, well, they could have splurged, but they decided not to splurge on Mike McGlinchey, who is an average pass blocker at best. And the 49ers want to get better in pass protection. Why pay Mike McGlinchey more than Colton McKivitz if Colton McKivitz might be a better pass protector than McGlinchey? That's the 49ers thinking. They're taking that second school of thought. Is it going to work? We'll see. I think pass protection has generally been an issue for the 49ers over the years, but it has improved significantly over the past two. This has been their riskiest move to date. They're walking away from their longtime starting right tackle in Mike McGlinchey, and they're going to somebody like Colton McKivitz, who is relatively unproven. And they are rolling the dice, but that rolling of the dice means that the budget at the offensive line position has decreased significantly. You're paying Trent Williams and everybody else. You're relying on cost efficiency and your development to get the job done. So let's see what ends up happening there. Meanwhile, the linebacker position, a little bit of a discount, I would say. We talk about the linebackers for the 49ers. They are the best in the league, right? Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw, that's your best 1-2 punch in the NFL. Yet the 49ers linebacker spending $23.3 million for the year, way down at number 19. So two things have happened to make linebacker relatively small compared to the rest of the NFL here, 9.7%. One, Fred Warner has a backloaded contract thanks to a restructure. Two, the 49ers re-signed Dre Greenlaw last year to a bargain. Cap hit of only about $5 million this season. Three, Azeez Al-Shire is no longer around. The 49ers decided not to pay a third linebacker to keep costs down in the linebacker room. And again, they're going to try to rely on the most cost-efficient way to replenish a roster, and that is on depth through rookie deals at the linebacker position. So you look at Jalen Graham, you look at D. Winters, you look at Marcelino McCrary-Ball, third linebacker spot, maybe, and that could also be occupied by Jair Brown as a third safety. Bottom line is these are guys with cap hits of under $1 million, and those can all allow the 49ers to be as cost efficient there as possible. Special teams bill also lower because of Jake Moody instead of Robbie Gould. Special teams is this one, 2.3%, that little sliver up at the top. So that's where the 49ers spending is going. If you think it should be higher somewhere else, well, too bad, because that's what the 49ers are doing this year. Maybe you'll get your wish next season. But in general, you take a look at the pie chart, and they have shrunk quarterback spending. They've expanded D-line spending. They are not following the league trend with DBs because they think they can remain the number one defense behind the strength of a cost-efficient linebacker room, which is the top in football, and a very expensive D-line, which is vying to be the top in football again this year. If there is any criticism, I think it's going to be mainly centered around the offensive line. People thinking the 49ers should be spending more there. That being said, who would they have picked up this season to make the O-line better? I think they believe more in McKivitz than anybody who was reasonably available. I think the 49ers are looking to bridge the gap until next year when they have draft picks again to pick their tackle of the future. who could eventually replace Trent Williams and also maybe help out on that right side. But Colton McKivitz is a big time bridge for the 49ers. He's got to play effectively for this cost division to work out. All right. So, anyway, if you enjoyed this and you want more, this is the article that you will need to read right here. How the 49ers spend their cap dollars from Nick Bosa to Brock Purdy. We can get into this and delve into the weeds over the course of the next couple of weeks. Maybe do a video for each position group so I can show you exactly how these financial machinations work. But first, that big picture overview, I think, was really, really important. If you guys have a question or two, maybe put them down in the comment section. Maybe I answer them. Maybe I won't. Depends on if they're good or not. Hopefully everybody has some fun 4th of July plans. Jesse asks, do I think that Bosa has more or less sacks from last year? I think he probably has less. I mean, he had so many last year. Now he's got Hargrave there. Eric Armstead's going to be a little healthier. Bosa can have a better year than last year. I think he will, but I'm not sure if he's going to have more sacks. I think, anywhere between 15 and 20 would be awesome. 20 would actually be more sacks than last year. But if he's got 15 and Hargrave's got 15 and Armstead has 8 or 9, all of a sudden you have more cumulatively than you did last year for the 49ers. And yes, I am expecting Bosa to sign his extension in the coming weeks. That is a very good question. Should lower the D-line share for this year, but raise it over the long run. All right, that sounds good. Everybody go check out the article. This was fun. We'll do a Q&A at a later date, maybe even later today. Everybody take care. Thanks for checking it out, and everybody have a happy 4th of July.